On Oscar night, millions of viewers watch envelopes open on stage in Hollywood, waiting to see which films and performances will define the year in cinema. In Oak Brook, Illinois, Municipal Attorney James M. Vasselli of Vasselli Law is usually watching too. He watches not just as a fan of film, but as someone who has spent decades thinking about how stories of justice are told. Each year he makes a point of watching nearly every nominated movie. This year he even appeared on the WRMN 1410 AM morning show, a Chicago area talk radio program, to share his predictions for the Academy Awards. Watching the Oscars as a lawyer, Vasselli says, makes it hard not to notice how differently Hollywood portrays the legal profession compared with the reality of practicing law. For Vasselli, movies have always been more than casual entertainment. A good film has the ability to pull audiences in and shut out the noise of everything else for a couple of hours. In a world where people constantly check their phones, respond to messages, and scroll through endless distractions, that kind of focus has become rare. But as someone who has spent decades practicing law, Vasselli cannot help but watch certain films a little differently, especially when Hollywood decides to tell stories about lawyers and courtrooms. That is where things tend to diverge from reality. Hollywood's version of the courtroom legal dramas have long been a staple of Hollywood storytelling and have shaped how audiences imagine the courtroom in the legal profession. Courtroom confrontations, dramatic testimony, and passionate closing arguments make for compelling storytelling. The courtroom offers a natural stage for conflict, moral tension, and high-stakes decisions. But according to Vasselli, the version of law portrayed on screen bears little resemblance to the actual practice of the profession. Hollywood thrives on dramatic moments. Surprise witnesses appear at the last minute. Hidden evidence suddenly surfaces. Lawyers deliver speeches that bring the courtroom to silence. These scenes may create memorable cinema, but they rarely reflect how the legal system actually works. The real practice of law is far more methodical. Most of the work happens long before anyone ever steps into a courtroom. Lawyers spend hours researching statutes, reviewing documents, studying case law, and preparing arguments. They often sift through years of legal precedent, searching for a single case that applies to the issue in front of them. Legal matters rarely unfold within the tidy timeline of a 2-hour film. Many cases take months or even years to resolve. It's a lot quieter than the movies make it look, Vasselli says. Why the Oscars still matter despite the gap between fiction and reality, the Academy Awards continue to capture public attention year after year. Part of that fascination comes from the unpredictability of the ceremony itself. Oscar history is filled with memorable moments. Some involve powerful acceptance speeches. Others involve unexpected winners. One of the most famous moments came in 2017, when La La Land was mistakenly announced as the Best Picture winner before the award was ultimately corrected and given to Moonlight. For several surreal minutes the entire room, along with millions watching at home, sat in stunned confusion. Moments like that remind audiences that storytelling is never entirely predictable. Films that endure often challenge expectations and push audiences to think differently about justice, power, and responsibility. Movies such as 12 Angry Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, and All the President's Men have shaped how generations of viewers think about the law and the institutions that uphold it. That influence is one reason Hollywood continues returning to legal stories. Films that get pieces of the profession right. While many courtroom dramas sacrifice realism for dramatic effect, a few films manage to capture elements of the profession surprisingly well. One example Vasselli often points to is My Cousin Vinny. Though the film is a comedy, its treatment of evidence and expert testimony is widely considered more accurate than many serious legal dramas. Another film that resonates with many lawyers is Michael Clayton. The film's courtroom scenes are not necessarily what stand out. Instead, it is the portrayal of pressure. In one memorable moment, Tilda Swinton's character practices a speech alone on a treadmill late at night. She repeats the words again and again while trying to get them exactly right. The anxiety and tension in that scene reflect something many professionals recognize. The legal profession carries significant expectations. The responsibility to get things right, especially when the stakes involve communities, public policy, or livelihoods, can weigh heavily over time. The biggest myth about lawyers, perhaps the most persistent misconception created by Hollywood, is the idea that practicing law is glamorous. In reality, the most meaningful work often happens long before anyone enters a courtroom. Preparation is the foundation of the profession. Lawyers spend countless hours analyzing statutes, reading cases, preparing legal arguments, and working through complex details that rarely appear on screen. The dramatic courtroom speech that suddenly changes the outcome of a case may make for compelling cinema, but in real-life success is far more likely to come from preparation than theatrics. Leadership beyond the screen. One idea frequently portrayed in legal films is the power of a single voice to change the outcome of a situation. While Hollywood often dramatizes those moments, Vasili says the underlying concept is not entirely fictional. In his work advising municipalities and public officials, he has seen leaders stand behind difficult decisions even when those decisions were unpopular. The circumstances may not unfold in dramatic courtroom scenes, but the responsibility is real. In those moments, the decision facing a mayor or public official is not unlike the turning point in a courtroom drama. Leadership sometimes requires individuals to take risks and speak up when it would be easier to remain silent. Vasili has written about similar themes of leadership and public responsibility in several published essays. Those moments may not occur every day, but when they do, they can shape the direction of communities. Reputation and credibility. If there is one lesson legal films occasionally capture accurately, it is the importance of integrity. In the legal profession, credibility is everything. Lawyers depend on trust from clients, colleagues, and the courts. For James M. Vasili, whose work often involves advising local governments and public officials, that trust is central to the profession. Credibility is built slowly through consistent judgment and clear communication. Building that trust takes years. Losing it can take far less time. A lawyer's reputation often becomes their most valuable professional asset. Why stories still matter. Watching so many films during Oscar season is a reminder of the power stories still hold. Sitting in a theater and focusing on a single narrative for 2 uninterrupted hours has become rare in a world filled with constant digital distractions. Yet stories have always shaped how people understand the world around them. Movies deliver those stories in a powerful way. They challenge assumptions, inspire courage, and highlight the values that define a society. The role that matters most among the many films released this year, one theme stood out to Vasili that had little to do with the law itself. Several stories centered on relationships between parents and their children. That observation prompted a personal reflection. For all the professional responsibilities that come with a legal career, Vasili believes the most important role he holds is being a father. If given the opportunity to trade some of the hours he spends working for an extra hour with his son Jacob, he says he would do so without hesitation. That perspective rarely appears in courtroom dramas, but it reflects a truth many professionals understand. Courage is a common thread when the Academy Awards conclude each year. The films that leave the strongest impression often share a common theme. They remind audiences that courage matters. Whether in film, in law, or in life, progress rarely happens on its own. It requires individuals willing to stand up, accept responsibility, and move forward even when the path ahead is uncertain. In Hollywood and in real life, the stories that endure are the ones where someone chooses to stand up and do the right thing.